SQOLOGY Podcast. Many thanks to ResoNix Sound Solutions for making this podcast a reality. There's a link in the show notes, but you can find out more about Resonix Sound Treatments, along with tons of other info, resources, and products at ResoNixSoundSolutions.com. So we got Harry Kimura. He's been on the podcast before. You can go back and listen to that episode if for some reason you don't know who he is. But we went pretty in depth on his history in car audio, which is many years, and he was there involved in the SpeakerWorks team and with his famous Acura. And Harry and I have personally talked for 20 something years, and he's always been very insightful and a good friend and very knowledgeable in the sport. So we're glad he's here today. Harry, how are you doing?
Doing all right.
Good
to be here.
Yes, sir. So we've been working on interviewing several people with follow-ups after finals, good and the bad, and it's actually been mostly positive for the most part. But we've talked to people who are competitors, who have judged, who everything else. I think Harry was a little bit more involved on the administrative side than anybody we've talked to before so far, and obviously he's been there as a competitor in the past, also as a judge, as he was this past weekend, I believe, and everything in between. But I guess we're here to get some of your input on the matter, sir.
Yeah, I thought the finals went well. I didn't really hear any complaints. There were a couple of, I don't know what happened here, but it's just a rule or whatever. But right. Other than that, no blow-ups, nobody complaining really.
No fist fights.
Yeah, no fist fights. Yeah, from that standpoint, I think it went well. The hard part was Aaron and Michael. You had touched on it about the reference room.
Yeah,
we put this thing together. John Sanders brought the Paradigm Persona at 7Fs. Really nice setup, and we did something similar last year with Mark Eldridge, bringing his dual system down. And this was primarily for the judges to get sort of a reference for the day, or reset if they need to. And that's why it wasn't really heavily publicized before the event, because there's more so for the judges. And
okay.
Yeah. However, aside from that, if we had time, we were going to open it up for the competitors that wanted to go and listen, but somebody had to man the place because, we're talking.
Yeah. You can't let somebody out there with $50,000 worth of equipment just to blow it up.
Yeah. So, you go up there, somebody has Slayer on full tilt or something like
that. Damn it, Chris Pate.
Damn it, Beavis.
Yeah.
So you need another staff. You need another staff person basically to man this thing for the whole day.
Yeah, and we've already started talking about that because I'm judging. I kind of made a statement saying after this time, I can go up because that was the end of my day on each day is around noon. And I was able to round up people, say, hey, if you want to go listen, come get me and I'll take you up. And it's basically the upstairs room from the SQ hall with the windows that overlook the hall.
Okay.
Yeah. It's kind of a wide room. And yeah, somebody had commented, hey, that's not nowhere near a car audio environment. Well, that's the point.
Right. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
It's meant to be a contrast to that, and what's possible in other scenarios, not a absolute.
Yeah. I had a couple of guys, competitors and judges saying, this is not very fair, but that's what we're striving for. I mean, that's the goal.
Yeah.
And I like the term reset there. That's what you alluded to, versus reference. It's something that you can go kind of similar to, I think the intent when IASCA had the German Maestro headphones is, it wasn't really necessarily a reference, but you knew their limitations. You know what was good and bad about them. And you kind of go back to that point where you weren't simply judging based on the last car every time.
Yeah. And you never want to base anything off of any car really, or previous car or the car last week or 10 years ago. Yeah. Every car is different the moment they leave. I think everybody has to have an attitude of any given Sunday. Any car can win, any car could lose.
Right.
Yeah. That sounds pretty accurate, and it gives you a decent measuring point every single time. So if you come back to the room, say after a class or something like that, you can, like you said, reset, start over. It gives you kind of like this known starting point every single time. So I think that's a good idea. But if we were going to do demos, we'll have to have someone, whoever you want, to be in charge of it, to basically man it. So other competitors. But it's also, because it's there for mostly the judging application, it's kind of tough to have it open for competitors all the time and still be used for when the judges need it. So
yeah, it's also sort of a judge's break room. So you might walk in there and one of the judges taking a nap or something. And so that was the goal. And I think, years past when finals was big, there used to always be a program, a publication that had event schedules and maps and whatnot. We don't have that anymore. And I think something like that would help, where it says, okay, in that room on this map at this time, between this time and this time, you can go.
Yeah.
Because
if we have more things like that, we could have like a one pager that basically outlines the events schedule, at what's going on at what time and kind of where that's happening. And it doesn't have to be a huge publication, but I mean, like a one pager ought to get it done.
It could also point out the ESQL thing, if people wanted to go see that in person. I think I don't see how anybody missed that, but apparently some people did. But
yeah.
Well, I think more than that even would be, the people, like Mike and others who had booth space there, who, had basically paid to advertise their wares at the event, to have their brands mentioned, to say, hey, here's the car, go demo it, or here's where the stuff is. You can go talk to them to learn more, that kind of thing, to where there was just, something a little more prominent,
could be
for those kinds of things. Yeah.
Yeah. And also, full page things for the sponsors, I guess. I mean,
right.
Everything's advertising, everything's marketing. So hopefully we could get a budget for such a thing and do something like that.
Because even if you just put it in, a PDF or image form and had it in the various groups and stuff, it would get around,
Mm-hmm.
But it would be nice to have something when people checked in for the event, both before and after, where people know where to check in and, where to pull in the car, stuff like that. But then also, once they get in, a reminder of, hey, these are some attractions here that you can check out. That I think that would be awesome.
Yeah, probably for the competitors that show up or intend to show up, just a general map of what's around their area.
Yeah.
Where to eat.
Yeah. Kind of like when you go to Airbnb and they have the little welcome packet.
Yeah.
Here's the Wi-Fi code.
Mm-hmm.
Here's how to do your dirty laundry, and here's a couple good restaurants around if you want to check them out.
Yeah.
I think, a little welcome pack. I think that would be, and it's something that obviously has been done before. It's not new. We're not discussing anything new here, but just a reiteration of that. It would be good to have.
Yeah. Well, I think more information is better than no information. So that's
100%.
But yeah, as far as that goes, I think that's something we should look into, and there are other tweaks and mods that we need to do. A lot of times it's just observing and just taking in mental notes and say, okay, this has got to change, or that's got to change, or we're going to need more room next year, or whatever.
Yeah.
So
that single room looked like it was pretty much filled to capacity the whole weekend,
which is great.
Yeah, that's an awesome problem to have. We'll definitely need some more room for the next one.
Yeah, it looks like they squeezed the eating area, those tables, a bit to fit more cars. So yeah, that was promising.
So is anything new in the works for IASCA for 2025 that you know of?
Yeah, I think there's going to be a few minor class change things, based on what we saw. Yeah, I've always thought that there should be another format in between SPL and sound quality to bridge that gap. You go to Surf City and you see a bunch of SPL guys signing up for install. So I think there should be a SPL format for them to also do a trim down install. But, it's just a matter of setting down those rules and stuff and getting that going.
Yeah. So they're signing up for the current SQC classes of install then, or?
Yeah, basically what is that called? IQC? Yeah.
IQC,
Yeah. So they're coming in and doing that. And, of course those guys are getting hammered on
by one or two cars. Yeah.
Yeah. On cosmetic integration and stuff like that. But, and that's okay. That's one of the things you gotta sort of remove for that group of guys as they ease into sound quality, if they ever do. I think a lot of guys eventually go to sound quality after SPL, but
with a different build or whatever else once they settle down and move forward.
Right. So things like that, just basic class changes, rules, not a whole lot. You don't want to,
iterations, not big swings.
Exactly. If you got to do it incrementally and in small steps. And a lot of the stuff, Travis wanted to do was sort of throw out there and see what happens, which is, I understand, because this kind of thing you can't really simulate or
right. Yeah. You have to try it and see what worked and see what didn't, and then go from there.
Exactly. Yeah, you got to see what sticks and what doesn't. So
it's just like a finals location, right? And I think it's one of those things where and this is kind of one of the reasons I've kind of thrown it out there for discussion point, is more to become a discussion point, not necessarily to say, okay, well, this is what needs to happen because of results of a very limited poll or whatever. But more so, where it's always been very tough. And you're in Phoenix, you're on basically on the West Coast, but it's one of those things that's very tough because people on the West Coast will say, well, you move it out west and then we'll come, and then you move it out west and then you might get 30% of those people that said they were going to coming. but things happen and it's not their fault. It's one of those things where best intentions, but because a vocal minority say that this is what we need to do to better things, doesn't always mean that's what going to be what the results are. And you have to kind of, like you said, you kind of have to do it to find out what works and what doesn't move forward.
Yeah. As far as the location goes, like you said, there's no guarantee anybody's going to show up from any coast, right? And no matter where you put it, for example, the first two finals were in Tempe, Arizona. A lot of people showed up, and at that time it was like 250, 300 people. Then they moved it to Oklahoma City. IASCA sort of opened it up for everybody to show up. They were really strict on it before, so that's why it was 250. Right. Which is a big number right now, but back then it was like nothing. But when they went to Oklahoma, it exploded to like 550, and so a lot of people showed up.
Right.
And it was pretty much a logistical nightmare, I think, for them as far as getting everybody done. But,
right.
Having 40 judges helps. But still, in 92, that thing overran all the way around the clock till 6 a.m. and restarted at 8. So we don't want to run into that situation because bad things happen when you do that. Then it went to Dallas. That was a good turn. Then it went to Greenville, South Carolina.
Yeah.
And that's probably when the West Coasters were like, oh no.
Wait a minute.
Ah, hell no.
We went too far.
Yeah. And of course the East Coast guys, well, it was in Tempe. Well,
right. Turnabout fair play.
Yeah. It's like,
and then it never really went back.
Yeah.
Got stuck.
Yeah, it got stuck, and that was probably when Paul Papadakis took over and
right.
whatnot, and it was stuck in Charlotte and
yep.
Memphis and all that stuff. But I think no matter where you put it, somebody's gonna complain.
Oh,
and
for sure.
If we moved it to the center, a lot of people say, "Oh, okay, there's gonna be 25, 30 California cars who show up." That's not a guarantee, and there's money at stake here where the venues aren't free.
Right. Well, and even just getting the judges there and everything, even if the venue was free, there's still a whole lot of commitment that goes into it before any competitors have done anything that has to happen first. So,
Right.
yeah. And it's tough when you have it was kind of nice when it was in Louisville for that stretch because it kind of there was some consistency. People knew what the target was. It was kind of like, if you knew a year or two in advance where it was a little bit easier to work towards that goal. Because even before that, it was, I want to say there was a couple finals there between 2010 and 2016 or so, where it was a month or two before finals that there was really a confirmed location. Mm-hmm. So it gets tough to say, well, I'm going to get my points. I'm going to earn my spot to be at finals when I don't even know where finals is or when it is or if I can be there. So
you can't take enough time off to get there if it's really far away with that short of a notice for a lot of people. So I think what built the Louisville finals to the numbers that it got to is consistency. So I think you're definitely right about that.
Yeah, I totally get it. And,
of course, then COVID happened.
Right. Yeah, that's the other thing is, the time it takes to get somewhere. This sport is not for I don't know how to phrase this, but the faint of heart or, the financially challenged or what,
yeah.
Because in every aspect, you're going to spend money,
Yep.
If it's regarding you have to take time off from work to get somewhere, or if you need to, pay a carrier or, gas to get somewhere, it's going to take time and money. And I feel for you. I feel for anybody that has a regular job. I do.
Yeah.
I was there. Yeah. That's one of the secrets. I never really told anybody, but I actually got fired from a job because of IASCA because I took too much time off. And they're just like, this ain't working out. You're going to
wow.
Was that competing or judging?
That was competing. Yeah. They pulled me into a room and, all of HR's there. And I was like, what the fuck? Oh, sorry. What the hell? and they're like, and they, it was a big company and, I was impressed. They did their homework. They had a video of the IASCA finals and all this stuff. And I was like, oh, you guys are jerks. So anyway, nobody can say I didn't ever pay my dues because I lost a freaking job over it.
That's pretty serious.
But anyway, yeah. So, the folks that have normal 9-to-5 jobs, I really sympathize with you guys because, you have to be back by Monday and you only get so much time off a year. And yeah, it starts to add up and you run out of vacation time. And then I get it when say, oh, no, I can't do it this year because I got to work, and I understand. So, what do you do?
Yeah, that's the hard part now, even with, when you hear people complain about the price of admission as far as entry fees and stuff like that. But the cost of the hotel is as much as the entry fees, if not more, just while you're there, much less if you're traveling and you have to stay, at a hotel a couple nights along the way, and your fuel costs and your rig or, just the wear and tear on the car and everything. Like, it all adds up. Like you said, it's not something that is economical by any means. And that's where it's kind of like, well, if that's the case, then that's where I think, some of these regional events are where you just kind of have to look at that being your focus, and then finals is what it is. But that's where I think finals also then can step up and be more of that event for the select few who are able to be there. It doesn't necessarily have to all be about growth as much as, catering to make the best, highest quality, high-end show possible, that the orgs are able to do for the competitors who are there.
Well, I've always been a sort of advocate about for the regional competitions. If you had 4 regionals in each time zone, and basically that would be the big event because you'd be supporting the local retailers or reps or whatever in those regions. Then you filter it down, eliminate cars to reach finals, sort of like cardio nationals. You had to win your class in that region to be invited to finals. You wind up with only 24 cars at finals, but
really good cars.
That's what it took back then. It was all done in a hotel. So it was, the venue was small enough where each car had a booth with pipe and drape, and it was in Fort Worth and 88 for Cardio National. So that was cool how they did that. And they had a dinner banquet and all that, because there's not, 400 people or anything like that.
Right. You focus on really putting those on display, which then makes the brands happy that are behind those cars and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
As well, especially back then. I guess there are probably far fewer cars that really have brands behind them these days. There's a lot more DIY, but makes sense.
Right. So, but if you do it that way, I think again, some competitors really want to go to finals regardless. So you're going to piss those guys off, and
right.
there's no winning formula here, but I've always thought, we should have regionals, and then at finals, we could really, really take our time judging these cars, go back to them if we need to. And also, that's the other thing. When you have 4 orgs in a weekend,
right?
When do the competitors have time to demo? I don't.
Yeah, their cars are filled with judges the entire time.
Yes. And that was the thing in the past, when it was, a single org, you were able to give demos to other competitor or spectators. That to me is sort of important, I think, for the public to hear competition cars.
Right. And even for the competitors to hear each other's.
Yeah. Yeah. So either we've got to lengthen the duration of the finals or remove some of them, because I think as far as scheduling goes, it's pretty tight.
Yeah. The only thing I could see there is if it was a little bit more organized as far as how that was put together. Of course, the problem is at finals, every organization kind of wants to have their order of things. But I mean, I don't know, like in 2019, we only had Mecca and IASCA to worry about then. Mm-hmm. But, I scheduled those two together, and it was not everybody there was some compromises here and there, but for the most part, it seemed to work out. I mean, and I would say, obviously with shows like Aggieland or SVR, we have 6+ judges. In years past, we've had 10 judges if you include scheduling the organizations and everything else. So I mean, I think it definitely could be scheduled together if the orgs were willing to let go of some of that control for the better. Because at that point, at least the competitor has like a 4-hour window where they're busy and then they're done. Versus it seems like otherwise, at any of the finals, it's kind of like, well, a judge could show up in my car at any time between Friday night and Sunday night.
Yeah.
So it's tougher to.
If it was scheduled a little bit, that would at least when you have to be at your car and when you don't,
Right.
Yeah, I think in the past, what really worked was sort of the drive up judging. I've always thought, well, what if we started on Friday? We have drive up as you go into the venue. You're judged as you come up, and all the orgs go through your car, and that's it. Right. And you're done for the weekend, or you're done for Sunday, and you're free to do whatever you want, demo all you want. So that's one way of doing it. The in-place judging is a bit more complex, just because
you have to find the car.
You have to find a car, or you have to find a competitor.
Right.
And, they're not around. Then you have to skip them. Then you're off schedule. Then it throws off Emma. Then it throws us MASQ. Then it throws off Mac. It's right. So. Anyways, that whole logistical thing has to get really ironed out if this was to work really well. But I think overall this finals was pretty good. I don't know. I can't speak for the guys giving demos. I think a lot of guys were able to give demos because we had a good amount of judges on our side to get through them fairly quickly. So, I was done by noon each day. So I thought it worked well from that standpoint.
Yeah, I have not heard a single complaint as far as that goes. I think everybody who wanted to give demos and had people who wanted demos from them, I think everybody had their opportunity there. So
yeah.
I know, Mike, you were busy that way all weekend, right? So
yeah. Well, I wasn't really competing, so that was my whole reason for being there, is basically just doing demos, promoting our shop and, our services for other people. So that's really my whole role of being there. That and supporting the competitors that we've, either helped build their car or help tune their car or something like that.
Which is like what, 50% of them?
It's not like that high. But yeah, there was right. It was more than we were in the double digits. We'll say that much.
Jesus.
And some people are pretty open about, like we helped them. Some of them remain anonymous. They don't want anyone to know, and that's fine. That's their prerogative.
Yeah, I mean, so I think that was good. From what I understand, you listened to a good number of cars, Michael. I mean,
yeah.
What was your impression of what you heard? I'm curious to hear what you have to say.
There was a lot of really good cars. Obviously, none of them are perfect. You know what I mean? There was even the best cars. I had something to I wouldn't say criticize, but something that wasn't quite perfect. You know what I mean? So so none of them were perfect, obviously. But I think the whole level of competition was pretty good, higher than some of the previous years. But the top cars definitely had less flaws than, say, like the mid pack cars. Because I mean, the ones in the middle area, they would have, maybe the mid bass pulls down and left. Also maybe some tonality issues. Not enough mid bass or too much high end or something like that, So there was a lot of them that were kind of like in the middle area, but there was, at least double digit cars that maybe only had like one small flaw.
Yeah, I agree. I thought overall there were a lot more better sounding cars than not.
Yeah.
And more so than the past. It's getting harder to pick apart some of the top end cars, to find the flaws. Yeah, so I think from that it's cool. It's nice.
I think some of that is like the shared community information, that's been over the years, a lot more people have, I would say, more in common with what they want the vehicles to sound like than differences. So the education level of what people expect a top quality sound to be is, I think, closer now. And then also, as you had alluded to, more competitors now seem to have other people helping with tunes rather than just, 50 people doing it themselves kind of a thing.
Yep.
So that kind of, I think that makes it to where it's probably a more even playing field. Cause I know Jeffrey tunes a lot of cars. Same with Miguel, myself. Brian has a hand a lot of them, Brian Mitchell over there. So I'd say more than 70% of the cars in the building were tuned by maybe 5 guys in the whole country.
Yeah, I think like what you just said right there is them getting exposure to a good sound quality car or good sound quality period is the important part. They need to be able to recognize what that is. I think before they didn't, because their cars always had the same flaws or same mistakes, and you keep docking on them and you keep writing the same comments. But all of a sudden, last year and a half, those cars start to bubble up and they sound better. But on the same note, I think like I said, it's key for these competitors that allow a lot of people to tune their cars to know their differences, to understand what's supposed to be good and what's not good. Because I've come across a couple of cars that are judged by multiple people. It was better before, now it's worse. And it's because, they explained to me, because it was tuned by this person and whatnot. And immediately I think, well, you didn't catch that. You didn't catch the difference, or you didn't catch the decline in this area. So if you don't know what that is, I think, you're just going to be lost. You don't have a target then.
You're definitely at a disadvantage if you don't understand what the judges are listening for, or what they expect to hear,
or why the car beat you.
Yeah. And yeah, hopefully a lot of these guys are getting exposed to that and then getting a deeper understanding. That's why I always tell people, go learn an instrument or go play an instrument for a while or practice it or take a lesson. It's never too old to take a lesson, but if you know the tone of an instrument, you kind of get the idea how it's supposed to sound and when it's reproduced. So just relying on your own car stereo, you'll never get it.
Yeah. You have no idea what the real thing sounded like. So it's tough to reproduce it as close to accurately as possible.
And I think a lot of people, myself included, end up going for too comfortable at that point. If you're not reminding yourself that some brass section hurts, there are some uncomfortable notes on a piano. Like there's, you're reproducing the real world that was recorded in a way that wasn't always comfortable. And so if you're just going for eliminating the spots of discomfort, you're going to end up with a very bland outcome that probably isn't going to win.
There's certain tones to certain instruments, and you got to be able to pinpoint those. And this piano key strike doesn't sound right, and you got to understand why that is, where it is. I mean, it's a long process. It's an education, that's for sure. It's not going to be overnight. Much like judging, nobody's going to be able to judge over a weekend on a conference call.
Right.
Yeah.
It takes seat time. It takes years of seat time and to be, that sort of level, I guess.
I know there's, from obviously you're most well known as an IASCA judge and that, and, there's been the addition or re-evolution, I guess, of, SPL and install being combined in some of the upper classes.
Yep.
I guess one thing that, comes out in these discussions is obviously other people's opinions on that and everything. But I think one thing that's been lacking a little bit is some of the reasoning behind doing that. Nobody's doing something just to be a dick about it, right? Like there's, I feel like there's more info here to be had, and we do. Travis has agreed to talk to us as well, along with some of the other organization leaders to get their thought process on what they're doing as well. So this isn't a got you or trying to pick on anything, but really just looking for the data and information as far as your perspective, what the goal is there.
I think you've known me long enough, and I don't look at things as people trying to entrap me or gotcha or whatever. And if you don't like what I have to say, okay, whatever, go on. And you have to kind of be that way as a judge. You have to be able to just be frank about things and just tell it as it is. Yep. Yeah, I have to get out of a car and tell people, look, this car doesn't sound good. And you could see their face just change in front of you. And it's just like, so I have to do that all the time. Right. But anyway, so the whole inclusion of install in the higher classes in SPL, I'll put SPL to the side for now. But the install, I think it's always important. And I think people have to look at this broader than their own competition car. A lot of folks say, I don't want to be forced into doing something I don't want to do. Well, we're not forcing anybody, really.
Right.
If you don't want to do install, you can stay in your own class. Don't go, don't move up. This is for the higher level cars. This is for the elite cars that are able to compete at that level. If you want to compete at that level, do something about it. If you don't, stay where you are. That's plain and simple. We're not twisting anybody's arm to go anywhere, really, or trying to do that. It's just that the original mission and intent for IASCA was a challenge. And that's what the C stands for. I've told this to a number of other younger guys. The C stands for challenge, and that meant for a wide variety of things. It's basically sort of like a decathlon of car audio. You got install, you got sound, you got RTA, you got SPL, whatever.
Right.
And somehow that got stripped down to just the javelin throw. It's just a one seat competition, which is like, okay, but how's that going to help the industry? How's that going to help the retailers and the professional guys like you, Michael, that try to make nice looking installs for their customers or push the envelope into, providing a exotic looking car steer system for their clients that are paying thousands of dollars for? You've got to have some arena where it's going to encourage guys to push the envelope or to progress the technology used in the installations and showcase those and compete with them.
Sure.
And that's kind of my, sort of thought on it. Is like at the highest level, install should be included no matter what you say, because that's part of it. That's part of IASCA's identity, really, ever since it started in 88, 89.
Yeah, and I think part of the problem there has been that because of the perception that people cast onto it, and what their expectations of it are. And I think, a lot of that has been, when there was kind of the exodus in 97 to 98, and then, Mecca wasn't the push necessarily in the beginning, but you had the back to basics, in the early 2000s.
Yep.
And you kind of had the breakout of the street classes versus the ultimate classes that still retained, the different, SPL, RTA, and install, but it was more geared towards the fuzzy carpet guys and that, like me. And then later on, then you had the separation of sound quality and install altogether from each other. And I think that's really when people started looking at IASCA SQC sound quality as the format to go up against Mecca sound quality as a format, and they're over the past decade or so, that's kind of been the battle. And it's been, I think when that was done, I believe the reasoning behind it was fair in that it was trying to make it to where somebody didn't just run away and constantly win on install alone, and also to where there would be more inclusion to try to get more crossover, because in terms of just the numbers, IASCA wasn't really winning at that point, as far as the numbers go. So I think it was one of those things where, hey, we can do this too. We can get these people too. And I'm not saying it didn't work, because I think it did work as far as that goes, but it did, to what I think what your point is, Harry, IASCA lost some of its class leading personality in that, because I don't think anybody doesn't look at IASCA with some level of respect in terms of, being the OG, in terms of having the highest level cars, everything else. Even you talk to the founder of Emma right now, like he'll tell you right now, hey, Emma exists because IASCA set this tone. And I think everybody is similar in that regard. And I think everybody looks to IASCA to be the premier leader in that. It's just that I think also, with IASCA playing the game along with everybody else, with stripping it down to SQC themselves, now it's a little bit harder to reformulate things to say, but that's not really what we're looking at as a complete car. I think that the idea is similar. It's kind of like religion, right? It's like, well, but I hate to bring up religion, but it's a good word. It's like if one religion believes that, because the Bible says all these things, and then another religion is like, yeah, but we don't put that much emphasis on the Bible. That's where your argument comes, because you're not really on the same page as far as what the argument is. And, now if you look at it, I think the way IASCA is looking at more holistically, again, at the top end, people are going, well, the best sounding car isn't winning. And I think, the perception or the argument could be said that, well, we're not looking for the best sounding car to win.
I think those guys that say that, well, I just want the best sounding car to win. Well, yeah, but so do I, and usually those cars bubble up and are in the top three regardless. But trust me, I've lost because of install plenty of times,
right? Right.
But I had the highest sound quality store, but I lost an install. I mean, was it at like in 92, I lost to Mark Fukuda, at Masters because they combined the class. That's the money round, and they combined the class. So him a pro and I was an amateur. He got third, I believe, and I got fourth in overall standing. And I knew in my head I lost based on install, of course. I mean, you look at that blazer, it's like, holy shit, right? And and I knew it wasn't because of judges. I never blame judges because really it's not on them. It's on you. It's on you to improve yourself, to overcome any judge's opinion, really, right?
Yeah. Yep.
If I lost tomorrow, I would look at what I need to do to better that situation, not to,
because that's the only part you have control of.
Yeah. And not to go online and chastise, start, blaming other people. Oh, it's because of this, no, it all starts.
You accepted the terms when you got there.
Yeah. So. Yeah. Pardon the French, but that was one of those, all right, MFers, I'm going to, so that's when I changed the car. The following year, I beat him. Now, I still may have gotten a lower install scores, but it didn't matter. That was my goal, was to beat that blazer. And I did it, and it didn't freaking matter if I had the best sound quality store. I don't care at that point. And that's the thing. If we really want to, I guess, or if IASCA wants to, what they can do is, look, on the higher classes, give out the awards as they do install SQ and SPL, but also they could also just give out the best sound quality in the class, another award. If somebody really wants that recognition to having just sound quality, well, that should be in conjunction with the overall, in my opinion.
Just like a separate type of thing.
Yeah. And they used to do this back in the day, best install overall and best sound quality overall, whatever.
Right.
But yeah, to me, it's the whole collection of things that make up the winner, and we're only doing on the highest class right now.
Yeah, I mean, right now it's just Pro 3 and Expert.
Right. So, but like I said, I definitely do think install needs to be a part of it at that level because. That's what pushes the industry, I think, as far as the professionals go. And basically, those are the guys that are making up the 12-volt industry. It's not the guys in the garage billing stuff.
Absolutely.
Ordering things off a crush field and hoping to win. Yeah, I admire you guys, but at some level, you're going to have to step up to the pro levels to be able to compete against those guys. You don't show up, at Monaco's F1 race with your souped up, Honda Civic and say, okay, I'm ready to enter. Okay.
Right, yeah.
It just doesn't work that way.
Right.
There's a certain amount of level of experience and
ability and preparation.
Yeah. I mean, people in their driveways can eventually get there, but it's just, it just takes time. So these guys that do it professionally do it day in, day out, and they gain that experience, and they get there. They have that expertise, and that's why they're there.
Well, and I think there's a few things. I mean, like what Mike said earlier, as far as the level of cars that are there, the amount of shared information, the amount of access to certain tuners, things like that. Obviously, that landscape has changed. There's a lot of, and I've brought this up before, there's a lot more, to your point, Harry, as far as kind of your acceptance of what the results were. I think there's a lot more. It's good and bad, but the judges seem to be on a lot more of a peer level with the competitors than there was, at least when I came up into it, and obviously you guys as well.
Yeah.
But there's not much boundary there, and I would say social media is probably a big part of that. Again, it's good in the fact that it's made the information more accessible. It's also bad in that it's kind of taken away that level of just acceptance.
Yeah.
Because there might have certainly been times in certain events in the past, when I was first competing, that there was a level of frustration that was probably, more directed internally than externally. but I would have never gone up to a judge and said the things to their face that people are, willing to say online in a Facebook group, now, or even the forums of old. I mean, this is not a new problem. It's not a new thing, and it's not unique to car audio in any way, shape, or form. This is anything where there's some type of subjective level of criticism or competition that happens. This occurs in almost this exact form. This is a human nature problem, not a car audio problem or a competition problem. But it has changed that landscape to a point. And like I said, I think that's where some people just aren't aspiring. And this is maybe for lack of competitors at that level, or maybe some lack of pomp and circumstance around, those categories and stuff. But I don't see, I guess my pushback on some of that would be that, you talking about the pro levels and going to F1 and everything else. I also don't see a lot of people necessarily aspiring for that now. I don't think it's a matter of wanting to show up with something else, but again, I don't know why. I'm not trying to, this isn't an answer on my part. It's more just, I just don't see a lot of people aspiring to do that. So that's where maybe the bandwidth is a bit heavy there on IASCA's part, just having 3 classes kind of, all inclusive on that part, versus it being, I'm not here to endorse or slam any part of it. I'm not part or not part of any of these organizations. I'm not trying to, anywhere else. But, Emma obviously includes install, and necessarily I've probably had to defend that more than I've ever had to defend IASCA. So I'm more in a position of being more accustomed to defending that. But, but with that, you have it throughout the entire class structure, and at the lower class structures, it's meant to be attainable for anybody with any system to be able to get 100% just by doing the legwork, just by putting in enough effort for one time to be able to, know what to present, know your car well enough, and have that documentation to get 100% score on that forward. With IASCA, it's like no install, all the install.
Yeah. And again, that's one of those things to throw it on the wall and see what sticks, basically.
Yeah.
We wanted to see, okay, we'll include installs, but we'll do that to dudes that are serious and experienced that know the install. We'll see what happens. Okay, it's worked out. It's worked out okay so far. There are some guys griping about it, but they wind up competing in it, and they're doing well. So it might be a thing where, in the future, I'm not saying it's a guarantee or not, but sure. I do think a checklist of your basic things should be trickled down to the amateur side, or even novice. Just your basic install safety items. Just make sure things are fused and whatnot. They've got protection and so forth. So sort of ease them into it, And we've been training the judges for install, with Gordon and Calvin and those guys having a great amount of input into stuff. But we're trying to dispel the myth of the creativity section just giving out bogus points for nonsense,
right?
And so that should have become a lot harder to get points now, because we're stressing, proper documentation, proper proof of things. So if you say, I've got a special enclosure that does this and does this at this frequency, prove it. We've got to see it working, and we've got to see it being real, because in the past people were giving points for fog machines or right, or the laser lights and stuff like that. It had nothing to do with,
here's my $150,000 speaker cables.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Exactly. So
way less smoke and mirrors and a lot more, factual evidence that this impacts the sound in some way.
Right. Originally, that whole section was really bonus points back in the day.
It was kind of just how good you were at presenting it too, because it was one of those things where if you were convincing enough to most install judges, they just wrote it down. Okay, yeah, here's your 6 points.
Yeah.
You didn't have to really prove much, like you're saying. You just kind of had to say, this is creative because of this. Give me my 6 points. Okay.
Yeah. Back when, with the beginning of the stuff, when you had the Larry Fredericks as judges and Rich Coes and judges, like you were saying, judges back then weren't your peers. These were freaking audio gods that were judging your car. You were lucky to get 2 points.
Right.
Out of 40, you're like, oh my God, I got 2 points. Yay. It's it's one of those things. So you've got to really think what's actually creative and what's not, and what's actually creative to the point where it makes sense. It's got to be creative from the car audio installation side of things. It's got to be in the signal chain. It's got to be doing something. If there wasn't a function for it, why is it in there? So anyways, I kind of want to put that out there because a lot of people still say, oh, it costs money to get those points. No, bullshit. No,
that's kind of the whole point of being creative.
Yeah. That's when there were bad judges giving out nonsense scores, right. and doing that. And so we sort of try to get a handle on that, say, look, this is not supposed to be an easy category to get points in. It's supposed to be bonus points. So you've got to go through these steps to making sure these things are provable, have proof and have legitimate reasons for being there. But yeah. So anyways, back to what we were saying is, hopefully we can include some amount of install down into the amateur classes, from on a very basic level.
Yeah, I mean, I think for consistency's sake, to just from a brand perspective with IASCA, you kind of have to willingly know and take the hit that you're going to turn away some people in the process potentially. Mm-hmm. I'm not saying you will or won't, mm-hmm. but track record says typically you require more people. They might do less of it, but at the same point, I think it reestablishes IASCA as being the premier as far as, we're looking for the holistic vehicle, not just the sound portion of it. And to me, for somebody who is being, I guess, my own devil's advocate does this to a certain degree, but my goal in terms of, the events that I do has always been based on sound quality, but doing everything we can to throw at it to ensure that the outcome is as, again, holistic as possible with as many qualified judges as possible put together on the correct teams and with everything as far as possible we put in place to make more of a flat lined, unbiased, here's the best car, let it win. Regardless of what class it is, what their background is or anything else. It's like you throw enough solid bias at it, and I mean bias as in competence, then hopefully we get the appropriate result. On more of the org level where you have single judges doing sound quality and stuff like that, obviously it's left to a little bit more chance and a little bit more direction based on any given Sunday there. But if you're somebody who is really looking for having more control of the situation, then obviously more objective formats like install, when the creative element points are in check, like what you're talking about, but install, SPL, RTA, whatever, all those things are more objective standards that you can put against the vehicles to really say, because it's a sound quality format in terms of quote unquote, around that saying sound quality format, in this case, I liken that more to saying this is an F1 car, or this is a NASCAR, or this is a monster truck, whatever, mm-hmm. It's not saying that sound quality is its only purpose. It's just saying that this is a sound quality oriented vehicle, and we're looking for holistically the best vehicle possible as a whole, with sound quality contributing to that, not being the only force, right?
Yeah. I read things online and stuff, and people wonder, and this org I got first, and this org I got last, or all this stuff. But dude, like, they're different. Right. Like you said, one's a monster truck race, and another one is an Indy car. Right. It's the same racing. It's the same sort of genre of racing, but it's different. So Emma's looking for different things. IASCA's looking for different things.
Right.
MASQ's looking for different things. MECA looking for different things. Do you have that expectations where everybody should align the same? And no, I don't see it that way.
I agree completely. And that's, again, seeing as many score sheets as I have with multiple judges being in the most logistically laid out the best way possible in terms of hoping for that to come together. from a statistics standpoint, I would be far more suspicious if everybody did align than not align.
Yeah.
It's one of those things where if we did have perfectly aligned outcomes, I would be far more worried with the state of things than I am with a varying outcome, because everybody based on so many factors, and that's part of what makes it interesting. That's part of what makes it what it is. And I think looking for, it was my big goal back in the early days of SQOLOGY when it was just IASCA and MECA, and there wasn't any crossover, there wasn't any tangible crossover happening between the two orgs. You're kind of either a MECA competitor and judge, or you're an IASCA competitor or judge. And, I really tried to weave those together because I thought overall that the cars would improve because they would be getting more feedback, and looking at things from a different angle and getting more tangible results because of garnering that feedback. I mean, it doubled their chances. Did we need 4, 5, 6 orgs? I don't know. It's getting a little bit out of hand, I think, to a certain degree there. But at the same time, it's like, maybe, all the shuffles out and everybody finds their place and it works. But looking for consistency between the orgs, I think is going to be immediately disappointing for anybody, and not ultimately not valuable.
That means the same person judged for all orgs.
Yeah. Well, even if you had the same person judge for all orgs, I think you would still get different results.
Right. Right. Yeah.
So I don't think it would, so like the tuner challenge, you were one of the judges for that.
Mm-hmm.
And, we had 4 judges, which if I, going forward, I'll probably limit that to 3 or 5, where there's an odd number versus an even number.
Yeah.
But, regardless, that's not the point. You had 4 judges, and I asked each of you to pick, 2 songs. And for the most part, each judge kind of used one song to differentiate. And if things were a little bit tough, they went to the second song. But me sitting in the passenger seat the whole time with the different judges, and Mike, you probably experienced this too when you did this at the WCA finals. Even from the passenger seat, you could hear what the different judges were hearing themselves, differentiating between them, and obviously using different music. Even though one judge had entirely different feedback from another judge, I agreed with both judges' standpoint based on what I heard, because they were using different music, looking for slightly different criteria. They themselves were geared to be more biased toward a certain part of the sound they were looking for that they kind of honed in on. I can't say that any of the judges were incorrect in any of the feedback they gave. I believe everything they said 100%, but all the judges had different feedback.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if they were using a score sheet versus coming to consensus, every judge would have had a different score sheet, and the outcome of those tunes in the same car, in the same environment, judged at the same time, would have been completely different if it hadn't been a consensus value. And so there's just too many variables and too many factors to expect 100% consistency, and that's not what you should be looking for, in my opinion, at this point.
Yeah.
I mean, that tuner challenge was, I thought it was great the way it was done. I mean, it's just no score sheet, just a hood slap or not. It worked out perfectly, I think.
But I think the valuable part of that too is I don't know of anybody that listened to the tunes afterward that disagreed with the outcome. It's one of those things where there was a couple of tunes that were very close, where it was definitely arguable, but there was enough thought process put into it to say, but overall, this is more important than that. This is why this tune wins. But I don't know. Yeah. But like I said, my thing was just that everybody had a little bit different feedback. Everybody had a little bit different outcome as far as where they put their emphasis on, and they were listening to the exact same car. It was just you're going to hear different things and focus on different things, and you change up the music, and when you have that factor between the orgs, and each judge kind of gravitates towards their favorite tracks and stuff like that, especially when it's a wide open playing field as far as that goes. You're going to hear different things.
And to that point, I think it's good that orgs like ECA, WCA, well, they don't call themselves orgs, but I'm going to say that they're orgs. Right, Michael? Anyway. And now there's a GCA, or something in the Texas area, isn't there?
Right.
In any case, like that group of guys with their playlists, has a lot of variation in it. And that's what, when IASCA redid their music, that's what we tried to get to is, look, it was great, whatever in the CD they produced, and it only have 10-second clips in it. That's great. But it only shoehorns them into a certain part of a song. And it's only that song, those 3 songs for that section. And I always thought that's not a good thing to do. We should have a selection of songs and leave it up to the judges, put the trust in the judges to do the right thing and listen to whatever section of the song they want to, as far as, what they know and what they reference it to, and give that freedom back, because when you start to shoehorn it in, people start to only tune it for those sections of the tracks. And
you end up very one dimensional, because it's like what I was saying about myself earlier, where I start over tuning to fix problems that are supposed to be there. Mm-hmm. And that's where you end up fixing problems that probably need to be there, instead of just going for what is actually being reproduced. So, and I think that is one thing that is beneficial as far as to the competitors, mm-hmm. as far as having the multiple organizations and that, because they are getting a more multifaceted mm-hmm. feedback and results. I think that's, in that regard, it's very beneficial to them from an event standpoint, mm-hmm. and making the event better. It's very difficult. But from the end of the day, for the competitors who are there for feedback and to make their cars better, which I would say is I would say there are more people in competition today that are there to, beyond the camaraderie side, beyond the, hey, we want to hang out with people who talk our same language, that kind of thing, beyond those human nature aspects of doing it. I think, when it comes down to the car and the competition itself, I think there are more people there focused on getting feedback on their car and how to the ways that they can do to improve it objectively, than there are people who are there to just purely win.
Right. And the whole feedback thing, it's probably really important for the younger guys, for the novices, amateurs, because, I'm sure they're a bit intimidated and whatnot, and they'd like to know what direction to head. And it wasn't always that way, when you had these sort of audio gods and pioneers that were judging your cars, they just get out, shake your hand, see you later. That was it. And
right.
And so, we had to wait until we got our score sheets and look at them and like try to decipher their scores and say, and, listen to things and try to interpret their score into what we need to improve, which is, part of it, I guess. You could still do that. But, I think nowadays if given the opportunity, I would like to spend time talking to the competitor after I judge. Okay, look, this is what I hear. This is a good part about your car, but this is the things you need to improve, and that will give you the biggest bang, that sort of thing. But sometimes when you get to these bigger shows, these major shows, and
it's very difficult.
Yeah, it's difficult because you're running on a schedule, and you can't do that because you need a schedule to adhere to. So, but given the opportunity, it'd be great to have like a 20 minute buffer, or, where you could just get out of the car, talk to them. And,
but that also, I mean, when you do have that conversation, that, to your point, was the way it was before with some of these people and their feedback, like that opens up the opportunity for criticism of the judge when they do get feedback like that now, especially verbally, if you gave different feedback from somebody else, like I mentioned before, or if you give different feedback from the week before, if you're, a local judge consistently judging these cars, then the competitor could be like, well, I didn't even change anything, but now you're giving me different feedback. And it's like, So obviously that opens up, that peer level criticism. But I think if that's where the competitors that kind of put themselves in check and understand that, the judges aren't robots, and your car isn't robotic. Like, the cars change, the judges change, the listening position changes, the approach. I mean, it all, like you said in the beginning, like as soon as the car leaves, things are different, So it's one of those things where if you kind of have to stop looking for what's the same in those things, or stop looking for things to be the same and uniform. And that's, you kind of have to look more at the overall pattern and direction and see, okay, this judge told me this, judge told me that, this judge told me that. Try to look at the similarities in that and see where they could be, on similar ground and saying the same thing just in different ways.
Yeah. And before pointing at the judge, when you should go through a process of elimination as far as your own system to verify things that are going funky in your own system. We had a case, I'm not going to name any names, but we had a case at finals where I judged the car. It sounded okay, got lively, whatever, it got loud and stayed together. Next set of IASCA judge went in there. It's like, man, it barely got to 88 dB and I can't hear anything, but it's there. It didn't follow the criteria of a breakdown, because the breakdown it has two criteria, right? About either the left or right is out or the system shuts off.
Right.
That constitutes as a breakdown, but it didn't follow that because it still played. It was just very low in volume. Anyways, he got out and told the guy whatever, but it just doesn't get loud enough. And, he's like, well, everybody knows my system gets loud enough. Whatever. Then he went in and one of his USB connectors went out or was failing.
Right.
So, it's not always a judge. It's usually the system.
Right.
Yeah.
And the system, I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, even like when we talked about the resets, having the home audio system there for a reset and things like that. But also at the end of the day, you're kind of necessarily judging on a curve for that day for the cars that are competing against each other. As much as possible, you want to be objective, but at the same time, there's still going to be some level of expectation based on the whole. So yeah, then that's where, again, listening to other people's cars is pretty critical, because if you went in and you only listen to your car and then you just you want to give any feedback on who you think should have won, that's good. It's very difficult if you weren't using the same criteria and even the same mind point. I mean, it's very different to just demo a car versus scoring a car with a score sheet. The thought process is surprisingly different between those two things. So
yeah.
So what about SPL?
So that's one of the things that can be done with a measurement device. They quote unquote objective measurement.
Right.
We just think, at the expert level, you should be able to do a high enough SPL to get a reasonable score. And it looks like a lot of them do. There were 3 cars. I think there were 3 cars that did the measurement over the weekend.
Yeah, 4 altogether, and at least in finals there was 4. You had Pro 3 and Pro 3, and then the TAN and Expert.
Right. So you had a 37, 33. There was a 20 something in there as well.
The TAN had 20, 24, and then third to first place. We're actually in order of SPL, 33, 35, and 37.
Mm-hmm. So that differential isn't that big. So right. it looks like, okay, yeah, it's reasonable, but it's one of those things, we're going to throw it up on the wall and see if it sticks. So it might change this year where we've all been discussing this and we all have ideas and stuff like that. So it might change slightly, not a whole lot, but I've always thought those guys in Expert, they all were competitors when SPL was part of it. So, they know how it is. And they all did install and they know how it is.
Right.
And they know 2-seat too.
Right. Yeah.
So it's one of those things where those guys bubbled up to the expert levels and they know how it is and they competed there, and they should, it's one of those things where
it might be the nomenclature that's throwing things off, because it's just the fact that you have, Pro 3 and then Expert and then Extreme Open, and it's just looking at it, it's kind of difficult to differentiate those from the outside.
Yeah.
And then, when you have, again, like at finals, you got, 46 of your competitors in the 5 classes, and then you have 3 classes where then you have a minority of competitors.
Mm-hmm.
It's obviously IASCA can do whatever it wants as far as that goes. It can be like, well, maybe we only have 4 classes overall in this exhibition class or whatever. Like, IASCA only has 4 classes. It's not like it's a number of classes war as far as that.
No.
It's just a matter of a lot of that is going to be learning, right? I mean, this was really the first full year of doing things kind of this way.
Mm-hmm.
You kind of have to go into it and see what happens. But, my personal, unasked for feedback there would be just to have more communication around the reasoning and a little more pomp and circumstance around those chosen classes to kind of spotlight what's happening there and why, just because I think that lends more to it to differentiate it necessarily to be able to say, no, if you're here, again, we're not fighting that war that you're having as far as the best sounding car wins, and you can be here at your own volition or not.
Mm-hmm.
This is why this exists, and this is, hearkening to IASCA's roots that will always be there. It's not trying to go back to the old days. It's not trying to relive something or whatever else. It's just what continues to be and hasn't changed IASCA's vision of the best overall car for this purpose.
Yeah, we want to make it. We want to make sure we have an avenue for competitors to head toward as far as competing, and we don't. I mean, alienating somebody is definitely not an equation here. We never want to do that. We always looking to accommodate everybody, but it has to be within reason. It has to be, not because of one car. And you're not going to create a class because of one car. It doesn't make sense. And if there's only one car in there, we're going to collapse a class. We're going to make it more competitive because this is a competition, after all. So you can't just compete against yourself every time.
I mean, I would like to.
Damn it. Damn it. I lost to me again. No.
Yeah.
Mike has that happen all the time.
Yeah, sadly.
So
the old expert competitor showcase, where they had
exactly
these, set aside, and this is the cream of the crop, this is the culmination of every part of the install, or sound competition, you guys are doing parts of it, but if you were to do all of it, this is what it looks like,
Yeah. And, in the whole extreme open class, it's probably going to change, but it's one of those things where cream of the crop, as you say, Michael, I mean, it's, to me, having a car that's so modified and it's it's in a class of its own. To me, that's not really for IASCA's intent, what they're looking for as far as the experts go. To me, an expert level car is a car that you could build for a customer.
Yeah. Yeah, I think your term exhibition class is pretty well coined there. Because these are vehicles that are not exactly you're going to drive it, from here to the next state or what have you,
Yeah. But then again, you don't want somebody to just, create a big box crate with put wheelbarrow wheels on it and push it around with no motor and a lazy boy in the center.
Right. Yeah. Just a mobile sound room kind of a thing.
Yeah.
Looking at you, Gerald Costa.
Right. You kind of want, if the public looks at this thing and say, okay, this car won, well, shit, I can't buy this.
Right.
Then how's that good for the industry?
Well, and I guess there's two sides to that, right? Like NASCAR aren't stock cars. F1 aren't, people aren't looking to watch something that is normal. So, I mean, I think there's a place in terms of those types of the Brian Mitchell vehicles, the Chris Pate vehicles, the Black Betties, the NASCARs, Eldridges, those kinds of vehicles, I think definitely have a place in terms of look at this cool thing we did, but it makes it very difficult to to cater competitively for those cars, because how do you even what's even the baseline between them? I mean, at least in NASCAR and F1 and everything else, there's a structure that, yes, these are outlandish cars, but there's 30 of them and they're all exactly the same in terms of these key elements. When you have very purpose-built vehicles, it makes it very, very difficult to look at. I mean, I don't envy anybody in that position, because it's you do end up having to have a class for those people, and it usually ends up where like one or two of them show up at a time. It's not where they're all showing up ready to go. So that's where it's like, well, if we get 4 of these competitors who are pre-registered for this class ahead of time, then we'll open that class up as being an like you said, an exhibition style thing, and have some kind of consolatory prize. But otherwise, it's you start catering to that too much, and it affects everything else.
Yeah, and so being an exhibition demo type of class is currently it's only 1 seat, has install, no SPL. So it's actually classified a notch below the current expert class.
Right.
So, and a lot of the guys that are competing in Extreme Open this year, they want to stay there. They don't want to move up and do 2 seat, or they want whatever for SPL, and that's fine. And so, from my IASCA standpoint, we look into this, we look at it and say, okay, well, what can we do here? So that's one of the things that collectively everybody's working on, as far as, drafting the rules of this thing and potentially expanding on that side, because I think there's 2 paths here. There's what we know is the Pro 3 expert path, and there's the exhibition demo class. So,
which I guess is why there's 8 now, because there's always been kind of 7. So that I guess that Extreme Open kind of just opened up a new spot, right? Like,
yeah. So, but we want to make sure that there's that avenue, and we want to make sure it's not only available at finals, it's available at 3Xs as well. So,
right,
because a lot of these guys that are competing in that Extreme Open are, want to compete locally, like the NASCAR and oh well, that car competes expert as well. But anyway, and I suppose that anybody could jump in and out of this class. So it's sort of an open class, but it's one of, I don't know, battle royale classes.
Now the sound quality is like in Pro 3. The sound quality is averaged between the judges. It's not added. It's not additional. So like the judges, it's not like a 200-point score plus 200-point score as far as that goes. It's just average. So like if 2 judges give you 200 points, you get 200 points, right?
In the Extreme Open?
No, in Pro 3.
Yeah.
Okay. Or any of them. I guess any of them are going to be the same, where it's just averaged among the judges. Okay.
Yeah. So you get the single seat score, then you have the 2 seat score. So basically 3 score sheets that are averaged across. So
that still sort of favors the single seat cars, I think. You know what I mean? So 2 out of 3 scores is from the driver's seat.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. So that's one of the things we
just
know,
from a mathematical standpoint.
A average mean would be better, probably beating the 2 seat, but I had to. People get pissed off again if I threw this out, but I thought, well, why doesn't we only have a 2 seat judge and we use the left side for the 1 seat score,
Right.
But everybody will complain, say, well, we got to have the opportunity to change the preset. Well, okay. You can't do that. So,
or just do it the 2 seat and drop the 1 seat. You know what I mean?
That's an idea as well. I mean, that's one of the things we have to evaluate and look. Yeah. What's the sensible thing to do here?
Yeah. Well, I keep you from having to judge it, like twice.
Right.
That's true.
You almost have to, in my opinion, for 2 seat, you have to have 2 people in the car at the same time judging both seats at the same time, because otherwise it's too easy just to say, well, here's my driver's seat, 1 seat tune, and here's my passenger seat, 1 seat tune.
Yeah. That doesn't make it a 2-seat car.
Right. And as long as they're all going up against each other, then but it's tough. You almost have to have 2 judges for 2 seat simultaneously, and then 1 seat.
Unless
one judge for 1 seat.
Unless you do the 1 seat from the passenger side.
Just really mess everybody up.
Yeah.
Mike, did you have any other questions or comments or feedback?
No, I just think you guys did a pretty good job. At finals, like that was definitely a better turnout than the prior year. So keep up the good work.
Oh, thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, I think overall, I mean, it seems like there's always going to be discussions to be had. And that's kind of why we're here, trying to have those in as civilized as possible. Because like I said, no matter what, there's going to be criticism or desired change or whatever else. But I think the more we can have these conversations more candidly and be able to discuss it, and it's all opinion, but at the same time, there's a lot of smart people behind this, and I think everybody's trying their best to make it obviously the best possible thing for everybody that's there. That's going to make some people happy and piss some other people off. But I think the more we can have these discussions, the more we can kind of get to a baseline of what that is in reality versus what just people make up in their head.
Yeah, and there were certainly great points made during this conversation today. So that'll definitely be taken into account, and we'll try to adapt things if they really, really make sense. And I think a lot of them do. So thank you for allowing everybody to have a conversation on this.
Absolutely. All right. Well, we'll leave it there. I appreciate you, sir. And we'll see you at the next one.
Yep. Until then.